Hi, and welcome to the Fulfilled Truth podcast, the podcast in which I like to find out how difficult it is to rise above everybody else and start different when you're starting your business and being an entrepreneur. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Harrison Woods, who I've known through different circles. We were LinkedIn. I know we got connected first through the Hunter Thompson's Race Fest thing
Mhm.
that he had. Um, and I wanted to talk to you because, like we were talking prior to this, you have a really cool story. Because from I seen your life kind of like just explode over the last 6 months through LinkedIn and stuff like that. And your story is really cool because one, you work at a university. Two, like I remember now, you're a professional DJ. You said you've been doing this for 15 years, so
Mhm.
that's awesome, kick ass, right? And then three, you're running your own company
Yes.
and successfully, right?
Yeah.
And so I just want to talk to you about that and share the successes, but also the uncomfortable truths about how hard it is to do what you do. So first, let's just start with a quick introduction. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who Mr. Harrison Woods is?
So my name is Harrison Woods. I was born and raised right outside of Philadelphia, Cheltenham, Montgomery County area. My dad lived in the city and my mom lived in the suburbs. So every weekend I would spend with my dad in the city. And yeah, I grew up, always wanted to be a doctor. And I was
Okay.
very, very hard headed about becoming a doctor. Went to college, and my junior year of college, I started DJing. And DJing took off, and I was like, well, I'm sorry, it didn't take off. I just knew that I didn't want to be in school anymore. So to make a long story short, I left school, dropped out, DJ professing for 2 years, and realized it wasn't what I wanted to do to a certain level. So I went back and got my BS in biology.
Okay.
I go back, get my BS in biology, and I started working at a clinic downtown. And there was some nefarious things going on with opioids at the clinic I was at.
Really?
Yes. To make a long story, but I'm gonna keep saying that. I'm really good with pattern recognition, and I started realizing
Mm-hmm.
that certain prescribers were prescribed more for the same type of symptoms for the same, and it
Oh,
just didn't make sense. And I was
Jesus.
like, okay. And then it got to a point where, as the one thing they don't teach you is that, like, as a physician provider, there's metrics for a lot of things, but there's no
Mm-hmm.
metric for pain. So like it's pain is subjective. So you tell people, like, how much pain do you feel in the day? I feel like I'm in a 10. And it just got to a place where, like, there are some situations where even the provider can't really do anything because of the fact that if someone's saying they're in pain, it's subjective. It's hard to find, how much pain they're really in, or if they're telling the truth or not. So you end up having to go through these procedures where, you end up giving more than you feel comfortable with, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still like, you want to do the best. So that happened. DJing started taking off even more, and I got to a point. This was a huge tipping point in my life where I got to a point where I had invested in myself equipment, time, and DJing, and it became very lucrative. And I knew I couldn't work for anyone else in my life anymore. Like it
Gotcha.
was, it was over for that. And even to this day, I still have my W-2 working at Penn. I'm very grateful for that job, but it's a cognitive dissidence now that, like, here I am working for someone else when I know I things are, you look at things different. Oh, there's power dynamics. Not to say that someone's abusing that power dynamics, but I'm not used to having a power dynamic. Whenever I'm DJing something like that, we're all on the same level.
All right.
And people, when there's a power dynamic, they may not even realize it, but they feel as though they can get away with saying certain things a certain type of way sometimes. Not to say I've experienced this at my job, but I just don't like power dynamics. And once I realized that, okay, like, I love DJing, I don't want to scale it any further than I'm doing now. What can I do in order to, what can I find in something that I'm comfortable with scaling with? So I was working for a huge entertainment company, and they always send me out to these like super affluent people's houses. And another shift in my mind was, I started shifting from what these people had to how they end up getting these stuff. So I was like, all right, they have nice house. Like, oh, how do people get this stuff? And like, what do
Right.
I need to work in order to get there? So I started doing a lot of research, and the common denominator was real estate. And I liked real estate because of the equity portion of it and owning a solid asset. And I thought that was kind of cool. So get into real estate, and in my head, I'm like, okay, like, I'm gonna buy a whole bunch of single family houses. I'm a burr, like, that seems like what everyone's doing.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I was like, in my head, I'm like, you know what? Like, I was actually walking to my job, and we were getting construction on our building. So I was walking and it was like, I remember it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I could see like the light on where on my floor when as I'm walking to work. And I'm like, like I wonder how people like buy apartment buildings. Like that's something I want to work my way up to. Like, let's just see how that works. And ended up doing a couple boot camps, and I'll be in these breakout rooms and I'll never forget it. And people are like, oh, I own like 3 single family houses. Oh, I own like 65. I own like 25. And you'd be like,
Wow.
and they'd be like, how many single family houses do you have? Do you own? I'd be like, I don't own any. Like me and my wife are looking
Right.
for a house now. Like I
Right.
don't. And I remember like being embarrassed, and then they would be
Oh
like,
man.
no, no, but I'd be like, man, like only, and they'd be like, oh my God, man, like you are so lucky. I'm like, lucky? He's like, yeah, man, like, oh my God, like you don't understand. If I knew what I knew now, I would just jumped into syndications. And I
Wow.
was like, what? And they're like, yeah, like you don't understand, like, like he's like, keep in mind, like, like they're like, I'm not gonna like jump it. Like, I'm assuming you make like around like 60 or 7K a year or something like that. Like
Hmm.
if you do single family houses, it's gonna take you 10 years to do that. And where you can do that in at least like a fraction of the time doing syndications. The only thing is it's a bigger learning curve. And they're
Right.
like, but I'm telling you right now, and heard from multiple people from multiple different boot camp masterminds, but they were like, it's all worth it. Just learn the syndication process, and you never know where it will take you, but start there. And yeah, that's where I started at.
That's awesome. And that's actually, I like how you went through the progression,
Yeah.
right? Because you kind of remind me a little bit, because I worked in a hospital. I did,
Mhm.
for 24 years in healthcare,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And I remember the last few years walking up to the hospital, just always looking at the hospital. I'm thinking, I'm doing the same thing every single day. I
Mm.
didn't have any of the power dynamics because I was like the boss, so
Mm.
I was at the top. So
Okay.
there was no power
Can't relate.
dynamics. Other
All
than
right.
like my vice president or something like that, But even then, they were all pretty. It was a really awesome, very well run hospital. But I kept thinking, I'm like, I can't be doing this forever.
Yeah.
This is. I just don't have the patience for that.
Yeah. True. True.
I'm not a sheep, right? Even though I'm working here, I'm like more the wolf mentality. Is like I need
Mhm.
to go and roam and do things. So I
Mhm.
love that you went through that and that you realized that, especially you're a very young man. So I like that you figured that
How old do
out.
you think I am? I'm just curious.
I, you're younger than I am. How about that?
Okay, say no more. I'm 30. I just turned 36, just to put that out
That's
there
what
for
I
you.
said. You're younger than I am.
Say no more.
It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So my wife and I were joking. It's like we're at the age now that everybody's younger than us. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Mm,
Yeah,
I feel
it's
you.
actually pretty cool. Pretty cool. But what was interesting about you is that you got a taste of being your own boss when you're doing the DJ stuff,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you realize that you can do more. So, um, based on all that information, what would you say inspire you to begin your journey to financial independence?
Oh man. I realized this is kind of heavy. When I was young, I had to be about 9 years old. I went with my dad into work. And we went into work, and my dad was like, like you may make sure you like, straighten up or like that, or like don't.
Sure.
He said, don't act up. He said, we're about to see my boss.
Oh, okay.
And boss was fine, nothing ever happened. But I remember that incident, and then it reminds me of guy. I don't know if you're familiar. His name is Damon Dash. Dame Dash he's one of the founders of Rockefeller Records with Jay-Z.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know who that is. Yes, yes, yes.
Dame has this notorious interview on the Breakfast Club, and I was watching when it first came out. This is like 20, it's like this is going on like 6, 7 years ago. And he was like, he's like, you think you're the boss. He's like, you'll never be the boss to your family if you have a boss at work. He was like, he's like, he's like, you all work here, but if something, he's like, can you get your son a job here? And I just remember being like, he was talking about like just feeling like he was a superhero. It's like you'll never be a superhero to your kids, and unless they're your boss walks them or something like that. And it reminded me of like when I was a kid and how like I had my dad on this huge pedestal, like my dad was the man, and then going
Right.
to work and realize that like my dad works for someone. Not knocking that whatsoever. Like
Sure.
I said, I understand realistically it's not for everyone, but for me is like my mantra is like I take my mantra or the thing I write down every day is I'm a manager of a 9-figure private equity firm, and I'm a superhero to my family. I want to be a superhero to my kids and my family in every aspect of life. And I never want my kids to see me in some way in a place where there's some sort of power dynamic where someone feels as though they have
Yeah.
power over me or they can tell me what to do. So once I had that mentality, it's just about like, how am I going to execute that and what does that look like for me? So ironically, real estate just kind of resonated with me the most.
That's actually really interesting, and I think that is what helps shape people,
Absolutely.
because you're supposed to learn from that stuff. And again, nothing wrong with, working for people, right?
Hmm.
Because we need different types of levels of workers, right?
Absolutely.
My wife taught me this. We've been married 25 years now.
That's a blessing.
Yes. And at the beginning, because I'm very stubborn, hard headed, imaginative, keep up with me or don't, it's like the circle of people that I surround myself with are people who are able to keep up the same speed.
Hmm.
And I came from another country into this, to the United States. And this country gives you everything that you want as long as you get up and work and go get it. Right. It's true. I mean, I'm living proof of that, right?
Hmm.
And I would tell my wife, like, I don't understand why people are happy just like flipping burgers or working at the grocery store or pumping the gas. That's like, I can't understand this. Why is it that they're not the owners of that McDonald's?
Hmm.
Why is it that they don't go in and own this or buy that or start their own business? That person has a great idea. What can they do that? And it bothered me, And she finally says, like, well, there's some people who are just worker bees. I'm like, what do you mean, no worker bees? Like, they just want to get up and work and then go home, you know?
Absolutely.
And she said, well, I'm a worker bee. And she's like, because she's true. She is a worker bee. We used to
Hmm.
work together, back when we used to work at a grocery store. And I was a supervisor and she was my worker bee. And she's like, remember that? I'm like, oh, you're right. I was like, oh. And so it's good that you kind of figured that out, that you were not a worker bee and that you were going to be more than that. And
Absolutely.
yes, in your early mid 30s to do what you do is amazing. So now that we know what you do, can you please brag about the apartment building that you acquired, that the deal that you did last year?
Well, it's pretty crazy. So one thing I had advantage over a lot of people is that I'd already became an entrepreneur with DJing wise. DJing
Right.
taught me to be like, there is no course for DJing. It's like either you want to DJ in your bedroom and not make any money, or you need to find some way to do what you love and somehow make some money out of it. So being able to navigate the club scene, promoters, and building those type of relationships with me, I had to figure out there's always a game within the game. I learned very quickly that it doesn't matter how good of a DJ I am if no one knows I DJ that good. If I'm not making relationships with promoters, because at the end of the day, they're the people who
Right.
hire the DJs, not so much the club owners. So I'm like, okay, what's the game within the game within uh, multifamily space? So I realized it was different ecosystems. You pay to get into these ecosystems. They teach you how to either asset manage, capital raise, or acquisitions, and then you branch off into one of those things. So for the big thing for me, first and foremost, was that I did not have the money to join these masterminds. So I'm like,
Right.
okay, like I don't have the money to join these masterminds. What can I do? I'm like, all right, well, so when DJing, if I couldn't get next to a club owner or a promoter, I would find someone in proxy to them and find a way in to meet the other person. So I was like, okay, I can't get into X person's group. I need to find someone that can teach me some sort of tools to figure out how to get into multifamily. And basically, ended up bugging my mentor about like, starting his own group, or if he was doing it until finally he did. He starts his own group. His name's Rasul Medical Wakil. He's from the Warrior Rob Cleef's Warrior program,
Okay.
which ironically was the first boot camp I actually did. He started his own program. His program focused on acquisitions, just underwriting, pure underwriting. So I was like, okay, like I didn't have the money to get into his program. He's like, listen, like I'll knock it down to like 9K, like see if you can get the
Oh,
money.
Jesus.
And I cashed out my pension, man.
Oh
Cashed
my
it out.
God. Okay.
I had like 12K from working in the clinic and whatnot. Cashed it out after penalties and stuff like that. Came out to like $9,700. I'll never forget it.
Hmm.
And I sent the money over to him, and I spent a year underwriting properties. We found the property in St. Louis because one of my teammates lived in St. Louis and found the 28 unit from a realtor. We got a great price, and so we acquired the asset. Now the second part was that I'm always saying to myself, can I see myself doing this for the next 10, 15 years? What I realized quickly was that I didn't want to look at spreadsheets for the next 10 years of my life.
Right.
That's just not me. So I'm
Right.
talking to a mentor. He's like, you should, get into capital raising. That seems that'll be more so you're more so might fit with you more. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I did more research. Make a long story short, I realized that getting into capital raising was something I wanted to do, and I knew what that means of marketing, building a brand, and I knew that I'm heading towards fund manager position. Now, here's the game within the game I learned from capital raising. I was asked to join a fund to help them raise money for the fund.
Okay.
Now, what I realized quickly that the most important thing I thought up until this point was the equity you have within the deal, whatever like that. But it's not, Mario. It's the data is the most important thing you can have. And that comes down to they're like, okay, we're gonna have this fund, and you get percentage whatever you want to rate or whatever you raise, or and then we'll do the equity splits, whatever down later down the line, whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. But then I started realizing that, like, okay, I'm building this relationship with these investors and I'm feeding them into their CRM.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I am creating a conflict of interest because I'm
Mm-hmm.
automatically creating a competition with me for when I do
Right.
further deals down the line. So at the time, I said, listen, like I've been doing a lot of research, and it makes sense that like I need to go off and do my own thing because these are investors I've nurtured and I plan on building relationships with and plan on
Sure.
having them reinvest with me, and I can't have this instant competition with you guys. So I had to leave the fund, and that's when I realized, okay, if I'm going to be doing this, I have to use the fund of funds mechanism in order to keep my data and keep my investors. And
Exactly.
that's been sort of like the route I'm heading at now.
That's actually pretty smart that you figured that out, and that you didn't jump right in, because that is something that, as you know, I'm also into the whole fund management stuff, right? And I was thinking exactly the same thing, because I have a pool of investors, although I haven't done anything yet because there's other things that I'm working on, right?
Mhm.
And exactly the same thought that you did. Like, wait a minute, why do I want to raise money for somebody and then you guys will have all their information? And then if I go ask for them for more capital, they'll be like, no, I'm already in that deal, and they're going to give me a better deal. And you're like, oh, that's not what this whole thing was supposed to be. We were supposed
Exactly.
to kind of work together and stuff like that, and work on different deals. So knowing that you've curated your mindset over the last few years or so with the different experiences, how has your mindset around wealth and financial freedom evolved over time?
Oh man, in my 20s when I was DJing, I was literally like just DJing to buy Jordans and like I had a job, like you know what I mean? Like I had a job and I was able to cover my living expenses. But how that really shifted where it was like, okay, I have like a million pairs of sneakers. First and foremost, I realized if you buy things in access like that, you have some sort of like mental health issue you need to figure out. So
Okay.
yeah, so I sat back, I was like, okay, like what am I doing? Like I'm trying to buy these shoes and all these other sneakers and all this other stuff in order to like impress people when I'm DJing, when it's like I don't really care about what anyone has to think. And I'm like, okay, I need to think about how I need to get to the next life-changing amount of money, because
Right.
for me it was life-changing to be able to buy a pair of Jordans every week. Like that was
Of
life-changing.
course.
Okay, like
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, what's the next step? Okay,
Yeah.
need to get this. I need to start working on getting my own equipment and blah 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 blah. So, and a crazy story was I started DJing heavy, money's coming in consistently. And my mom's like, oh, well, Harrison, like, you're making X amount of dollars. Like you should think about like moving into like a new spot. Like, you're making more money, you can afford a new place. And in my head, I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense because I never wanted I never wanted to depend fully on DJing. And in
Okay.
my head, it was like, I need space in order for me to buy. At the time, I needed like this special mixer or whatever like that to get the best
Sure.
equipment, this, that, and third. And I learned very quickly how comfortable and how great it felt to live below my means and to not live paycheck to paycheck. And I was like, I wish like, and I was like, and I'm like, why don't they ever teach this stuff in school? And then DJing told me about tax breaks. And I was like, okay, like it's all a conspiracy. Like there's no way I'm 22 years old and I have to teach myself how to pay taxes. Like, how do I know like, organic chemistry and damn near quantum physics, but like no one ever explained to me like how taxes favors the business owner and like America runs on capitalism. And
Yeah.
it's like, if you're willing to take those type of chances as a business owner, like, the tax system works in your favor. But
Exactly.
it all starts with the foundation. I tell everyone the foundation of anything is like you have to live below your means, because just having that whole of like this being out of that survival mentality frees up your mind to think about, okay, how can I use this capital in order to invest in assets and things that are going to get me to that next level of wealth.
No, that's perfectly stated. It's not the need versus the want, right?
Yes.
Like, do I want those or do I need those shoes?
Yeah,
right? And a
exactly.
lot of people, unfortunately, and I don't blame this as to a generation, because it's not an Instagram or TikTok thing. It's happened. Every generation has dealt with that.
Mhm.
You know, they see that one kid that has all the money or the family, and they're like, oh, they have the expensive shoes, and then you go home and, like, I remember when we came to this country, we had to buy. My mom bought us shoes at Payless.
Yeah. Oh
I don't
yeah.
know if you
Oh,
remember Payless, and it
yeah.
wasn't the shoelaces one; it was the one with the Velcros,
The Velcro. Oh yeah, yeah. I had the Spider
because it
Man
was
shoes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All that.
buy one get one free, right? So
All that.
the pogo, and so but every generation has dealt with that, with that living with the Joneses mentality. And one thing I've realized, and I did talk to my son about that, is it's not about how much money you have in your bank account, it's actually your net worth, right? It's
Mhm.
basic math, how much you make a year versus your expenses, money coming in, money coming out. Your net worth is what actually defines you, right?
Mhm.
Because, for example, you can have a gentleman or a wife, whatever person that makes, let's say, $2 million a year, right? But they're spending $2.2 million a year. They're
Exactly.
negative 200,000. While you have that hardworking housekeeper, right? Or the gentleman that's cleaning the floors, right? And they're making $60,000 a year, but they have possibly $100,000 saved up because they're saving the little pennies for their children to go to school.
Exactly.
Or when they get money in, their expenses are minimal because of exactly what you said. They're living within their means. I think
Yeah.
that's such a smart view for you to do that, because you're right. I don't know if it's a conspiracy. I'm not into all that stuff, but it is strange that um, if you don't learn it, you become part of that system, the sheep,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And like yourself, you woke up, you're like, wait, hold on, I want my tax breaks.
Yeah. And
You know,
like Mario, for me, it's sort of like the biggest thing. Well, culturally, I realized is like there's a it. I feel as though another thing for me was realizing, like, why do we feel the need to have these like expensive things, like things to show like we have wealth? And I realized that, like, especially in inner city neighborhoods, everyone is at the same poverty level or above the poverty
right?
level or whatever poor level is. And so when one person gets a pair of Jordans, they're fighting against people want to match that, and it goes back and forth. But in other middle class, one thing about middle class neighborhoods, that there's a socioeconomic scale. There's someone who the doctor lives down the street, he makes a little bit more,
Hmm.
so he drives a nicer car. Someone may not make so he drives a pickup truck a little bit less or anything like that. And because there's that scale in that one neighborhood, no one's competing with each other, because I know he's a lawyer.
Right.
I know I work at the school and I'm a teacher. I don't make as much as a lawyer. So it's cool for him that I understand that he has that Beamer and I don't have a Beamer. You know what I mean? So I realized, like, here it is, like, here I am in this area where a lot of people are just bouncing these, like, I have this back and forth, but like no one is leaving. And it was just kind of weird that I saw so many people who have bought all these expensive clothes but were still like struggling,
Oh
in
yeah.
where in the environment. So I was like, something has to give. And then that's when I learned that, like, the wealthiest people I met, like, didn't really wear, like, they wear quality clothes, but it wasn't about the labels. And if they
Yep.
really did wear something that was nice, it was always like a wristwatch or something like that. But like, they never felt the need to have to brag about the wealth. And the real people who were really well off did their best to try to hide that they had money
Yeah.
in the first place. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Poor people will show off their wealth,
Exactly.
and it's a horrible mentality. They'll go
Yeah,
off and wear the thick chains and get themselves with an expensive car that they can barely afford.
exactly.
And it's just bad, that you have to do that. You have to kind of like sometimes mirror that, the wealthy people's, like, you don't. I was watching this TV show. The owner of I think is the in that the Suns in Arizona. I cannot remember his name, but he started his company in, I think it was Michigan. Yeah, because he's from Detroit. And garbage, right? He started his garbage, right?
Oh,
And
well.
he was on this TV show. This guy's a billionaire, right? He owns, I think, a hockey team and a basketball team.
Mm.
And he came on and he was wearing like a t-shirt and sweatpants and a sweatshirt, right? Like a hoodie. And I had to look, I'm like, wait, that's this guy? And I'm like, oh my God, look at this guy walking around with
Absolutely.
sweatshirts, and he's a multi-billionaire. Like, he's like the fu money kind of guys, you
Yeah,
know. And I
absolutely.
and I was like, I was telling my son, like, always remember that stuff. Look what all these guys do. They don't walk around showing off and bragging about their wealth, because those are the quiet ones, are the dangerous ones. Those are the smart ones. The ones
Absolutely.
that boast about how much money they have, they don't got anything.
Yeah.
And
And for what reason? And at the end of the day, do you really want to be around someone who wants to just boast about their money? Like,
oh God, no, 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 no. So with everything that you do with
mhm.
the DJ, marriage and your W-2, and then your private business, how do you balance enjoying life while still planning for your future?
Oh, I'm a stone cold workaholic. It's as simple as that. I'm gonna be honest with
Okay.
you. Like, yeah, I mean, like, another thing I didn't talk about is that, like, ever since I was 13, I've been working since I was 13 years old. My dad worked for a
Okay.
catering company, and we used to work on the weekends. So I was already, I guess you could say, I was already exposed to like outside the 9 to 5 mentality. Like, I always work Fridays and Saturdays. Like, my friends from high school know me showing up to parties at like 10:30 at night, and I'm wearing a
Hmm.
tuxedo because I just came from a catering event. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like stains on my shirt and everything like that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone was cool about it. It's funny. No one made fun of me. Everyone knew I was like working and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as soon as I realized that, like, in order for me to attain certain type of lifestyle, there I have to realize that you have to make certain sacrifices, especially in the beginning. Like when I was DJing in the beginning, like I practiced every day. I was, working doubles Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and stuff like that. But I remember it was nice because it got to a place where like the jobs would come to me and I didn't have to work as much. So I could just pick the
Okay.
job that paid the most, and it paid off in the long run. And for me, providing for my family is a huge deal. I don't know, like some other people don't have that type of like, or don't have that certain dynamic. So for me, a big goal is for like my wife to not have to work. So I'm like,
Sure.
okay, if my wife doesn't have to work, if I don't want my wife to work, I need to make X amount of dollars a year. So it's like, okay, like I need to be working. And like I said, I'm a huge competitor too and a workaholic. So it's like I work 7 days a week now. Work at least like 12 hours a day. But like I said, it's all about like there's certain type of lifestyle I want. I could be very honest about that. I'm not playing, it's not for a lot of people, but for me, it's like I realized early on that success isn't for the masses. And I know that the way I think is like utterly crazy. Like I know I'm batshit crazy. Like I totally get it. But I want to be the best. Like I just it's for me, it's not enough to just be like, I don't know, like I'm a man of extremes. Either I'm all in or I'm all out. So it's like for this, it's
Okay.
like I want to be the best. Period.
So based on what you just stated in regards to like being a workaholic,
Yes.
and that you have specific goals, right? Um, with that mindset of being a workaholic, what are you gonna do when you reach that goal? Like
Oh
what
man.
happens? What happens? So here's a good one. I'm going to throw a little monkey wrench on you, right?
Yeah.
So you're a young guy, 30s, right? Let's say you in the next 2 years,
Mhm.
you get to a point that you don't have to work. Wife doesn't have to work because the income is coming in passively, right?
Mhm.
Deals are rolling in. Like I know an operator. I'm sorry, not an operator. A fund manager out of Dallas. He does 4 deals a year. That's it,
Mhm.
and he's fine. You know, um, what are you gonna do when you get to that point and you're still a workaholic and your wife's like, no, no, I want to go to Hawaii, and take a week off.
Yeah, we go to Hawaii then. Mario, Mario, I want to be the best, man. It for me, that's that. I love the game. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it, man. It's like people say like they want to retire. I remember like it would hit me like last year. I'm like, yo, like I'm never going to retire. I'm just going to do deals on my term. Like for me, the ultimate thing is to be able to take it to a level where it's like, okay, now I can like this is as far as I want to take it. And for me, it's like I need to get there before my mind clicks like, all right, this is enough. Like with DJing, it was like, oh my God, like I'm working every weekend. I'm making X amount of dollars. Okay, like I don't want to do festivals and no, I don't want to start my own entertainment company. This is as far as I want to take it.
Okay.
But like as far as like this real estate and private equity, it's like I love talking to people like you. I love doing deals. I love making other people money. I love growing something. And I probably the only person who's going to stop me is my wife. She tells me when it's enough, it's enough. And it's like, you know what? You find someone you really love. And I love my wife to death. Two things I love about my wife. The same thing I love about her is the same thing that we disagree on. My wife does not care about money,
Okay.
and that's a great thing. So I know she's not with me for my money or my aspirations for money. And it's also the worst thing too because my wife doesn't care about money. She's like, well, we don't you need to work.
Exactly.
And I'm like, listen, like, certain things I want to do. So she understands that, and she's very, very, very patient with me. So literally, I make sure that I block. The first and foremost thing I do is I make sure I block out that time with her to make sure she is straight. But outside that time, I'm lucky that we're both low maintenance people for the time. But let me not say too much because my wife is carrying her first child now. She's 10 weeks pregnant.
Okay.
So that's been a life changing experience. So yeah,
So just you wake up every morning, and this is a Tim Allen joke. Uh, wake up every morning and just apologize.
yeah,
Say, I'm sorry. And she's gonna say, I'm sorry for what? Say, I'm sorry for anything stupid I'm gonna do today. Just apologize in advance. And massage her feet as much
yeah.
as you
I
can.
got you.
Don't,
I got
don't
you.
say anything.
I
Because you
got you.
have no idea what she's going through. No man does.
Exactly.
By the
Exactly.
way, congratulations. Yeah, you're
Thank you.
I think your life is gonna be your perspective is gonna be different
Yeah.
because once you see from experience, right?
Mhm.
My daughter is 23 and my son is 21.
That's awesome.
And like you'll kill for your family. I mean, you'll
Absolutely.
kill for your wife right now, but wait until a baby's involved. Whoa, you're like super dad right there, okay? And
Yeah.
you get this inner strength, and you beat that mentality of like I don't work because that happened to me. Okay, I want to work, all that stuff. I'm like, no, I want to be here with my baby.
Mm.
I don't want to miss that first step. I don't want to miss that first word. I don't want to hear about it through secondhand, like my mom or my wife, or like, oh, the baby did this. I'm like, damn it, I missed it because
Yeah.
I'm putting in 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so not that it's bad. You need to drive.
Yeah.
100% you need to drive. I don't. A lot of people say, "Oh, we need to hustle." That's not hustling. Hustling is for fools. People who are smart have to drive.
Yeah.
You
Work hard,
know,
work smart.
you work hard and smart, right? But then you get to a point, and I learned this in at the hospital. You know, I kept seeing way too many people who retire, right, 60, and then within 2 or 3 years, they have these major strokes, and then they
Mm.
die. I'm like, wait, what the hell? They're working all their lives hard, finally reach their retirement age, and then they die.
Yeah.
This is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, Money's supposed to work for you. You're not supposed to work for your money,
That's
right?
true.
And it's gonna be interesting to hear, a few years down the road how you are. You're gonna be like, I'm only doing 3 hours a day because I nailed it hard because now I'm gonna be with the baby and the wife and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
we'll see, we'll see, we'll see.
Our situation is a little different though because like we don't have a lot of support. And I'll be honest with you. So in my head, it's like, yeah, I gotta make it happen. It's a lot of pressure, but the one thing about pressure is I love pressure. I thrive under it,
Oh
which is why
yeah,
I think I became a DJ. But it's like, for me, the biggest thing is like I love what I do. I love doing this, even though I haven't reached anywhere near where I want to take it. But I truly love like talking to people. I love work. I love real estate. I love raising capital, making people money. It's what I love to do, and that's why when I realized like, okay, like you die tomorrow. My wife says, my wife always keeps me grounded, like, what could happen tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, but one thing I know is like, first and foremost, I'm fine with the choices I've made in life, but what I don't feel fine is something happened to me and you guys aren't taken care of.
right,
That is number one priority.
right.
I'm gonna be all right. One thing about me is I've had a interesting life, especially in my 20s. Like I've told you the biggest thing, kind of the biggest pivot in my life was I spend so much time alone. I got to know the type of person I am.
Hmm.
But you reach that age where I realized, okay, I've spent enough time on myself. It was time to give that time to something that was bigger than me. And that first that was my wife and growing our family, and now it's like our child to be. So for me, it's like I guess maybe things will change when I'm able to take care of them. But I mean, as far as retiring, it's just like, man, like if I go out, I go out.
No,
I love what I do, man.
that's a myth that people have, that retirement. I've learned that, um, and I seen it. When you retire, you need to start to die. Okay, so
Mm,
people need to switch that mentality because you shouldn't retire. You should just shift, do something else.
mhm,
Because if somebody who's older and they retire and their partners are gone because they died or whatever,
mhm.
um, and they just stop working, they go home and they like die of boredom.
Yeah,
You need to maintain your social circles. You need to go and volunteer, or like you're going to be doing, continue doing your deals.
yeah,
That's fine. Just do it at a slower pace,
yeah.
because
Absolutely.
by that time you retire, because you are, if I compare myself to you, you are 15 years ahead of where I should have been, because you started 15 years younger than I did.
Everyone's path is different, though.
No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah,
You have an advantage that most people don't have. One, you are successful, right? you have a good life, um, and you have the drive, and it's really really cool because you're like, if you look at the percentage right wise, right, you're like 0.01% of the population
Yeah.
ahead of everybody else, and I think that's awesome. That's why I wanted to talk to you because um, the struggle is real, right? And so let me ask you this: since you've been kind of going through all the your life changes, what is a common myth about building wealth that you would like to debunk?
Oh, a common myth about wealth I would like to debunk is the fact it doesn't happen overnight. Oh, here's the craziest thing too, and I'm sorry if I make a lot of allusions to DJing, but like I
No,
remember
it makes sense. Go for it.
when I first got into the private equity, I felt like I didn't want to tell anyone like I was a DJ because I felt like everyone was coming up from, oh, I was a surgeon, oh, I was in sales
Oh
making
God,
X amount of
yeah.
dollars a year, and I'm like, I just came from DJing, but like here's what I realized that a lot of the comment was like I wasn't net positive until like year 3 or 5. Like, and it's like people don't like get that. And I'm like,
Hmm.
and like once you have, and it's funny because I talk to my other DJ homies about it all the time, but it's like, yo, like, do you remember when like we were just like struggling just to get that mixer that we knew we needed is going to take us to the next level? And then it hits you one day, and I know it's going to hit me right with this. It's like you hit like, oh, snaps, like, oh, I'm like money's coming in, like, oh, like I'm doing pretty well now. You know what I mean? And I told a lot of people, it's like you have to be willing to be negative or to be in the red as far as your investments before you start to see the big money. And I realized the bigger the investment usually into something as far as dollar wise, it usually equals out the multiple, it's usually more you get out at the end. Because I'm gonna look at how much I paid DJing. I was like, okay, like that was a nice chunk of money getting all the equipment and the experience and stuff like that. But when I see what I'm doing with this, I can already know that the multiple is going to be even something I can't possibly imagine. You know what I mean? Especially when you're learning with this is different because it's all knowledge based too. So it's like I'm getting knowledge rather than physical equipment. So that's kind of like even a bigger trade off. It's a bigger exponential multiple in my head. So like, yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like being willing to go into the red for years.
Okay. Now, what would you say was a mistake that you learned earlier on in your life, either as a DJ or as in your capital racing side?
Oh, no one's coming. No one's coming. Even if you pay like no one's coming. Like you said, I realize it is, you reach low points, and I've been fortunate, but like my points weren't crazy low. But I realized like,
Hmm.
like I'm sitting here doing the same thing every week, and it's like nothing's going to change if I don't change. You know what I mean? And I'm not even
Okay.
complaining of the situation I was, but it was like, okay, like no one's coming, and then I even now when I meet people and they give me advice, like I always thank them like very graciously because I know like first and foremost, like no one's time is free, especially within this space. People are, the more successful you are, the more busy you are. So for someone to
Right.
take 15, 20 minutes of life just to give you these nuggets and not charge you anything for it is for me, it's like I never take it for granted. So it's like, just realizing that like, you are in charge of your destiny. Your choices are gonna make your future. So it's like you have to make the right choices, man, because no one's coming to save you. No one's coming. No one's
No,
coming.
that is 100% true. But you actually stated something that's very interesting that I also found out. Um, there are there's two sets of people, right, in the world, and it usually kind of sucks. It sometimes tends to be your family and your some close friends, right? Like for example, you were telling the world in LinkedIn about your successful, acquisition or that deal. Every single person in that circle was high five, congratulations. Nobody said anything wrong. You know, this group that you surround yourself with, entrepreneurs, businessmen, um, and women, of course, are there to support you and to teach you. If you were to say, "Hey, I just made $100,000 out of my first deal," awesome, kick ass, high five, right? If you go there, tell that to your friends or certain family members, your wife obviously going to be extremely happy, because I've heard this and I see this. They get mad. Oh, you're so lucky. Can I have some?
Mhm.
Like, no, it's not like that. This is
No.
something that you work hard for, and I'm glad that you're able to realize that the circle of friends that are teaching you your different people around you and your mentors, um, that is your knowledge. You're right, knowledge isn't for free, but when people are willing to give you knowledge for free, soak it up because
Yeah.
that is just the best thing, and people love to share it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's been amazing.
Yeah.
Um, what do you? So, what is an uncomfortable truth about money or investing that people often avoid discussing?
Ooh, the more money you usually have, the less time you have.
Okay.
People aren't ready for that. For the most time, when you are running something, I mean, it's of course it's funny because we work in the world of passive investments, but when you are able to make a certain amount of money, you realize that that money usually comes at a cost of time. Like
Hmm.
when we talk about like really big money, I don't even want to give a dollar amount, but because use your imagination. But these people who are making really big money, they're usually strapped for time, is what I've seen. And even when I'm talking to like, so one thing I started doing at my job is I would do these corporate Christmas parties, whatever like that, and I always make it a mission to talk to the CEO and talk to them and just be like, you have any advice? I'm raising capital, and they always like spit out these little gems, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But the one thing I always realize is when I talk to them, they're very straight to the point, and they're very like, do X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 and okay, then it's on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, like, and I'm like, okay, like I don't take it I don't take it personal anymore. I just know that these guys are running these huge companies, and they just like here to do this, here to do this, here to do this. And one thing I always hear is it's like people talk about like how Tony Robbins, how his time blocking is crazy because he's got a lot of moving things, and I realized that was a huge thing for me was the less money you usually have, the more time you usually have. And yes, someone's like abusing you as far as like working hours, but it's like when you are really at the top of whatever you have going on, and especially, I'm sorry, this is the one caveat I give to, especially when you are a business person, you run your own business. Working for someone else, you can be on the clock and you can
Right.
try not to answer your phone, whatever like that. But when you are the top person and you are running something, you are the visionary of your company, you have that time usually is more constrained the more money you tend to make.
That's really good advice because most people don't know that, and I thank you for that because people think that you make your first 100,000 or 200,000 and you're fine, but you need to maintain that, right?
Yeah.
You need to get more.
Jay-Z said, I got a car I haven't drove yet for 2 years. And I'm like, okay, like, all right. So if I get X, Y, and Z, I may not be able to drive it like once or twice a year. Like, is that enough for me? And I was like, yeah, it's enough for me. Cars are cars. It's like, just look at yeah, it's enough for me.
It's something to brag about. Go for it, man.
It's not even brag about, it's just something to be able to look at it, like, all right, like, yeah, but it's like, I don't know, for me, like I said, like, I know I had to come to this conclusion, like, I am crazy, Mario, like, I'm crazy. I don't expect people to think like me, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, and that's not everyone's path is not like mine too. And it's like, you gotta keep in mind, like, I know, like, let's say I'm at a different side of the scale or the spectrum of people who are just like work ethic and work mentality is just different, and I totally get it. I totally get it. Like, and my wife, she's a season ticket holder to the Eagles, right?
Okay.
Goes to every game. I'm a diehard Eagles fan too. Go Birds.
Sure.
Um, and she goes to these tailgates, and I just never go because I'm always working on Sunday. And she's like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, people are like, they always ask her, like, we never see your husband. And I'm like, I'm always working on Sundays doing stuff like that. And it's funny because my wife is talking to me one day. She's like, you never go to the tailgate. I said, I love the Eagles. But I realized I started having this like thought process change of like the Coliseum sort of thing. And it's like Rome where you give them bread in a circus, and they're just like, and I'm like, yo, football games are 4 hours a week. Like,
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Oh
you're
yeah.
spending 4 hours watching this game. And I'm like, don't get me
Just
wrong. Like,
sitting there.
and then the crazy part is that like some people win or lose, that shit will dictate how their week goes.
Oh yeah.
So I had to like take a step back. It's like, okay, like I love watching the Eagles this and that third, but like I can't justify watching the Eagles for 4 hours when I know like me and my wife I'm trying to build something for my family. So that's just
No, I
you know,
think your concept of time is actually correct because it's like I said, when you're not working, you're not making money. You know, I used to talk to like our doctors because like in California, when the doctors don't work for a hospital, they're independent contractors, right?
interesting.
I know it's an interesting rule. Other than Kaiser somehow got around that that rule where they can actually hire their own doctors. I have no idea what they do. I
So
know
how does
they
the
have.
benefits work? Do they have to buy their own benefits or something like that?
So the rule is
Oh,
what you don't kill, you don't eat.
wow.
If you're not working, you're not eating. You
But
know,
they're probably getting paid more though, right?
no, it's Medicare rates.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
wow.
unless you are like a director of a unit where you might
Mhm.
get a stipend from the hospital, or you are a specialist, surgeon,
Mm, yeah.
a neurologist, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, those guys, they can demand whatever they want, right? They can tell the hospital,
Mm,
like let's say you have a specific orthopedic surgeon that's unique in the population, right? And they're like, okay, I'll do surgeries, but if you charge this, you need to charge this for me. My fee is $50,000 per leg, for example,
mhm.
right? Because the way the hospitals see that is like, okay, if I hire Harrison Woods, orthopedic surgeon that specializes on doing surgery for patients who are like 65 to 90, and
Everyone's
that's
gonna
all the
want
people that live here,
yeah.
and that doctor can bring me that business,
Mm,
they'll pay you.
yeah, absolutely.
Supply and demand, right?
Absolutely.
And they'll work them, and
Yeah.
but man, if those the doctors on vacation, they're not getting paid. So
Mm,
it's an interesting dynamic. It's kind of like what you're talking about. It's like a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the doctors, you know are extremely overworked, and some of them tend to be underpaid.
yeah,
People don't
absolutely.
think that. They don't not
Mm,
granted, that's a small amount. Yes, you do have the doctors that are making $800,000-900,000 a year. And I saw that at the hospital, and I was seeing, so in the Bay Area, right? That's 24 years ago. Interventional radiologists, or the doctors at that time that would go and do surgeries for somebody who had a brain clot, right?
mhm.
Back in the days, they would cut you open, try to find the clot, and remove it, most likely causing huge amount of brain damage, right? But that was the only way. The IR doctors are the ones that go in through your leg, go through the veins all the way through your heart, maneuver through the neck arteries and veins, go into the brain, and with little hands, pull them out and bring them out. They're
Mm,
specialists, right? I saw this doctor one time. I was talking to him, and we knew how much he made because everybody knows this guy was making good money. On call 24 hours, 7 days a week, because there was only one doctor for the whole Bay Area, and he went through 4 different hospitals: Stanford, UCSF, the 2 hospitals in San Jose. Married 3 times,
yeah. Oh yeah.
right?
Easy.
Like, and I saw them like, yeah, I don't want that. That's
Yeah.
not what I want. I don't care how smart you are or how much money you're making, but you have no life, no family. That's not that's not stable,
Yeah.
so
Mm,
um you again, once again, you're nailing it. Your time is valuable, and spending 4 hours sitting around, tailgate or watching a game, that where you can make that one deal that's going to give you $100,000, go for it.
yeah. And it's
that
just
that
and like I said, my biggest thing is like everything's relative. It's like it's just not what I want. You know what I mean? Like I get it. If that's what you want to do, the tailgate and stuff like that. Like I said, my wife, that's what she likes to do with her family and stuff like that. Like I totally get it. But just like it for me, it's just like like my thought process just changed a lot. And reading changed my thought process about a lot of things. So it's just like, yeah, like this is my life. And I realize I'm a little bit crazy and everyone else can have fun at the game. You know what I mean? Enjoy yourself.
So I'm going to respect your time, and I have 2 more questions for you.
Of course.
Okay. um I'm trying to think of which one. Oh, I know which one. What advice would you give to a professional who is stuck in their financial situation?
Mm, kind of hard to think about. Like, what's financial situation do they like? What do you mean?
Like they're stuck thinking that they need to make more money. They don't know how.
Oh, then you need to do a financial audit of your life first and foremost. If you feel like you're not making enough money, then it's like when I was quote unquote lost, and I was trying to figure out what I want to do. I realized funny story. Will Smith had just gone bankrupt after his first album, and they came and took all of his stuff, and he
Mm.
was with his girlfriend, and he was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't have any money. I'm trying to make things happen. And she was like, if you ever get, I learned that like if you ever get lost, like you should go places and try new things where things are happening. And she convinced him to go to our Arsenio Hall show. And he was like, she's like,
Oh,
no, like go to Arsenio Hall show. Like everyone goes there, whatever that. Will Smith goes there, ends up meeting like Quincy Jones, and then he ends up auditioning
wow.
for the Fresh Prince, and then he ends up, the Fresh Prince stuff.
Right, right.
So I've always made it things like if I ever feel like I'm lost, or when I talk to someone and they feel like they're lost in life, I tell them to start trying different stuff. And I told them that for the first 20 years of my life, I thought I was going to be a doctor. And then I end up reading and trying different stuff. And I realized real estate really stuck with me. Didn't think I'd be in private equity. So, things leading to different things. But if you are financially stuck, it's usually a mentality thing. You do an audit of the things of how you're spending your money. So give yourself some break, because I realize a lot of times it's people not living, like I said, below their means, and they have that stress on them of just living day to day, and they need to
Yeah.
free up that space in their head to focus on trying different things comfortably and not worry about starving next week if they don't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then lastly, you you talked about the different advice that you've heard, that you've been taught, different CEOs and different mentors and stuff like that that you've talked to. Now you are our mentor. What would you tell somebody who's just starting out in their path of either their own business or becoming an entrepreneur?
Oh man. The one thing I learned is if you can pay for speed, easy. This is a crazy thing. So been teaching 15 years. I could teach someone what I learned in 15 years in about like 5 years. There's only two things I can't teach. I can't teach you to have that hustle mentality, to practice stuff like that. And I can't teach you certain experiences that you need to have. But that's when I realized the power of mentorship. And especially when I got into this area, it was like, okay, I can spend 5 years trying to figure out how to buy an apartment, or I can just go balls to the wall and pay for someone who I know can teach me the right stuff, pay for the speed. Because, time is something you can never get back. But money, it's like, people realize, I'm like, oh, I cashed out my pension. Like, oh my God, like you cashed out your pension. I'm like, what the hell else was going to spend that money on? Like what, like a car I can barely afford, or like some more clothes? Like, no, like
Yeah.
that money I know is getting me to the next level. You know what I mean? So it's like, you need to pay for the money to pay for the speed. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm saving so much time. Like, a year, I was able to close a 28 unit in a year by paying that money. And now I have a knowledge base that's taking me places I couldn't even imagine a year ago.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Mr. Harrison Woods. Congratulations on the awesome successes that you've had. Your future successes, future baby coming soon, I think,
Yeah.
right? Next few months.
August. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, dude, August is gonna be here like tomorrow. So
I know.
remember what I told you. Apologize, say you're sorry, and be massaging her feet, man, as much as you
Feet,
can.
feet, feet,
Uh,
feet, feet.
yeah, but thank you so much, and
Of course, Mark.
that will bring us to a close, and we'll talk to each other next week.
Of course, Mario. Thank you very much for having me, guys. Mario was a cool guy and a genuine person. It's something that, like I said, you don't really see a lot today. Mario's a genuine guy, man. You can really see it through his content.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Of course.